As the prophet of esports, I rely on trustworthy and meaningful data every day. Data from our research partner, YouGov, offers the most complete view of esports fans and gamers in the world, providing context to who they are, what they think, the brands they buy, and things they do. YouGov's connected insights and research services inform strategy at every level. If you're a team, a brand, agency, or rights holder, you should be talking with YouGov. Their partners measure and maximize ROI and are telling compelling stories with data. Visit yougov.com/gaming-esports to learn more. Guys, let's talk about another thing we touched on recently, Arcane. Did anyone actually watch the series?
I watched like 10 minutes of the first episode.
Lindsay, have you watched it?
It's on my list. I haven't had time. These past couple weeks have been a little too crazy, but I plan on it. I heard good things.
I will say I watched a few episodes, which is rare. I don't watch a lot of TV, and I was blown away, like absolutely blown away. Supposedly, it's the only show ever, I guess, in recent history to have 100% Rotten Tomatoes score. Oh, yeah. And I was blown away with the art, the music, the storyline, like incredibly well done, incredibly well done. I was not expecting to be that impressed. And then I saw this news from like 2 or 3 days ago, and the headline was Arcane renewed for season 2 by Netflix. You know, there's a gaming business story here, obviously, which is Riot potentially pivoting more heavily towards, you know, broader entertainment as a consequence of success with Arcane. You know, I always come back to why isn't Blizzard doing this, right? Why is, and will we see Riot put out 10 shows on Netflix next year or over the next couple of years as a consequence? Where do you guys think this is going, given the success of Arcane? Jimmy, maybe start with you.
Yeah, you know, I saw that article also. I was pretty excited. Yeah, again, even though I didn't follow the series, that was more a result of me just not being a League fan. But I appreciated, as you mentioned, the production quality, the story. I thought it was pretty interesting, and then I backed out for something that I was more interested in. But when I saw that it was renewed for season 2, I instantly shot over that article to some other people I knew in the space, just kind of saying, you know, I think it's happening, right? You know, we have some random documentaries. Explained has a really cool documentary on esports on Netflix. There's some other programming that's slowly making its way out of the YouTube, Twitch kind of world and into these streaming providers and traditional broadcast. And I think, you know, we've talked about some of the others before, whether or not they're well done. I mean, the Witcher in recent memory, right? I don't know if you guys saw that story as well. Potentially there's room for 7 seasons. Henry Cavill's fully on board to fully commit to it. And, you know, then the Mario movie, all these other things where you're kind of seeing gaming now, I think really becoming more and more accepted. I would imagine that there are a lot of gaming shows, movies, and other media type, you know, other content in media that are being pitched right now, and it's less about like, is this going to happen, and it's more the timing, you know, how much money, how much time for production and editing, because the things that we see today have been in production for 8-9 months on the short end of that, right? More, right?
They're saying season 2 is not going to even come out in 2022.
Yeah. So when you think of the time it takes to produce something like this, you know, if you're not already in that queue, I don't know what to tell you. I think there's going to be a huge push for your content just like this, or at least a huge release of content like this over the next 6 months that's already been in discussion.
Jimmy, that's what I was going to say. Are you implying that there's a bunch of stuff that's in the pipeline that we just don't know about, and in 6 to 12 months we're going to see this huge glut of like gaming sort of media content, like entertainment style shows related to some games, and there's going to be too much choice at that point?
No, I'm going to say yes to that, but also it's really just going to be the start, because anything that's coming out in the next 6 months was already greenlit before they saw the success of Arcane, right? So then give it another year and a half to see the effects of how really the size, or rather how much now all these streaming providers, you know, stations, etc., are leaning in this direction. So I think it's going to be massive.
Michael says Arcane was 100% great. It overtook Squid Game. Surprisingly, I think we need more crossovers like Arcane. Look, I thought it was way better than Squid Game. I mean, not to say anything bad about Squid Game. I just think Arcane's the way better show. And I think, Jimmy, you made a good point. You brought up The Witcher. And to me, what made the Witcher series on Netflix special is also what makes Arcane special. Like, I'm not a League guy either, right? I know one character, Misfortune, and that's it. Like, I don't know any other character in League.
Mm-hmm.
But I was able to enjoy the show without having any in-depth knowledge. In the same way, I know people who had never played the Witcher games and still truly enjoyed the Witcher series.
My whole family. I'm sorry. Keep going.
Maybe that's the recipe for success in these crossovers.
Yeah.
So
my whole
if I can
family
break
watched. Go for it, Jeff. Go for it.
The only reason I bring it because it relates to this. So I think I put this in the chat, but it was an article I saw about it was an interview with I think Niccolo, the CEO of Riot, and he mentioned, which surprised me, that they were viewing this more as an engagement tool for existing players versus a sort of funnel expander to bring in new players to the universe, which actually to me was surprising. I would have normally thought this is like, okay, if you're a League player and you're hardcore, like maybe you'll check this out, but League doesn't monetize that really. Like it's Netflix that does. Whereas like it could have been a really good way to bring new people into the universe of League and get them to play. But it seemed like his at least quote was that that's not how they were viewing it, which I think is super interesting. I don't know if anyone had thoughts on that, if that surprised anyone else, because I thought it was surprising to me.
Well, when we talked about this coming out a little bit ago, I remember we had this discussion on if these things would be as successful if they weren't on Netflix. And I still just think like the top 10 on Netflix and the way things catch on and catch fire on Netflix can be such a powerful tool. And so you don't need, they might not have made this for people who weren't interested in League, but I know I'm going to watch it now. I don't know anything about League, but
wouldn't that be exactly the point of you would watch it because you're not interested in League and then you might start playing League? So wouldn't that kind of like be the opposite of what?
I don't know if League's that kind of game.
Yeah.
But you know what? I think everyone's wrong about this. That's kind of like, Jeff, you said it's one or the other, right? It's like,
well, obviously it doesn't have to be one or the other. Clearly.
No, but meaning like you mentioned these two things, which is it to engage with the hardcore League audience, or is it to bring new people into League? My simple view on Arcane, having now watched the show, is it accomplishes neither of those things, right? It's not for the hardcore League player, and it doesn't bring new people into League. I truly believe this is just another sort of revenue line for Riot. It's an extension of their IP into new areas, right? Like it doesn't have to be connected to League at all, other than be inspired by similar IP and universe, and that's okay. I mean, I don't know if you guys.
That's a fair point. No, that's a fair point.
Megan says, love it. Great conversation. Megan, how's it going? Great to see you here.
I'm interested to see how this compares. We've all talked amongst ourselves before the show, right? Lindsay, I know you brought up Last of Us on HBO. Jeff brought up Mass Effect show, the Halo show coming out to Paramount Plus. So I'm just interested to see kind of what those shows do for their respective brands and driving viewership and engagement versus gaming on their titles, or converting new audiences. What I was saying earlier was, my entire family watched The Witcher. None of them even knew it was a video game. It was like my proudest moment to be like, that's a game of the year, right? So,
but that's the beauty of these
exciting
things. It doesn't have to be tied. There doesn't have to be a success metric tied to the game itself, right? It could stand on its own and still be perfectly successful and a perfectly legitimate endeavor for the business. Lindsay, sorry, go ahead.
No, I think that's absolutely right. I just think that no matter what you do, this kind of brand recognition and people understanding what League is, in the end, is good for Riot, whether it's a direct success metric or indirect. I don't think that it's necessarily possible to quantify the exact effect that Arcane's going to have on League of Legends and on Riot's bottom line. But I think that having this kind of success certainly helps. Whether you can measure it accurately or not is a different story.
Well, You
I
saw
love
when
François.
The Witcher came out. I mean, you saw like a massive uptick in the player base of The Witcher. So that's why that's the only reason why I was, and to your point about, it doesn't need to have crossover, but that's why I was a little surprised to hear, Nick Lowe say that that wasn't the goal, which, maybe that's just corporate speak, but I would have thought it was to bring in more people.
Well, Francois's comment is super interesting in this context, obviously, which is, he says, this is anecdotal, but a lot of my friends reinstalled League after watching Arcane. Maybe there's a
third
churn,
leg, yeah.
like a churn kind of avoidance, like get nostalgic sort of ex players to come back or things like that. I don't know. It's interesting.
Which sort of honestly makes more sense than bringing in new people, because to Jimmy and everyone's point, it's really hard to integrate new people into that game. But like, if you're someone who had played it, you churned, this could easily bring you back. So actually that could make a ton of sense.
It would be interesting to see that metric. How many people have come back after like inactive accounts for a while as a consequence of the show? We'll probably never be able to see that data, but I think it would be interesting.